Sophia, a black single mother rushing home with her colicky infant, was stopped in her tracks by the sound of desperate sobbing. She pivoted, her heart sinking as she spotted an elderly couple huddled together, like lost birds at a desolate bus stop on the outskirts of Richmond. The biting wind whipped around them, and they trembled visibly, utterly alone in the fading light. Sophia's wallet held barely enough for a carton of milk for her son, but the sight of their distress tugged at her conscience. Without hesitation, she approached them, her voice gentle as she inquired about their plight. A few hurried sentences later, she'd made up her mind, summoning a cheap Uber and ushering the two strangers into the relative warmth of the backseat. Little did she know that this seemingly small act of kindness would unravel a web of deceit and irrevocably alter the course of all their lives. Before we delve into the heart of the story, let me know where you're reading from, and be sure to subscribe because tomorrow, I have a truly extraordinary follow-up you won't want to miss. The bus stop on the edge of Richmond stood stark and empty, bathed in the sickly orange glow of a flickering street lamp. Sophia Williams adjusted her 3-month-old son, Ethan, against her shoulder, the familiar weight in her arms a stark reminder of the heavier burden she carried in her heart. For months since Michael's funeral, and the silence that greeted her each evening still felt like a physical blow. Her phone flashed 8:47 p.m. The last bus had pulled away over 20 minutes ago. Great, she muttered under her breath, already mentally calculating the exorbitant Uber fare she couldn't realistically afford. That's when she heard it. A sound that pierced the night and made her freeze in place. Crying. Not the innocent wail of a child, but something far more profound and disturbing. The kind of soul-deep sobbing that speaks of unspeakable pain and broken spirits. Sophia cautiously turned. On the weathered stone bench just 15 feet behind her sat an elderly couple, their white hair catching the dim light. They were huddled together so tightly it seemed as if they were trying to merge into a single being. The woman's face was buried in the man's shoulder, her entire body racked with sobs. The man's eyes were tightly closed, tears tracing paths down his deeply lined, weathered cheeks. Sophia's first instinct was to avert her gaze. Mind your business, Sophia. Get home. You've got enough on your plate already. But something in the way they clung to each other, a silent testament to a lifetime of shared joys and sorrows, compelled her forward. Excuse me, she began, her voice soft with concern. Are you okay? The woman looked up, her blue eyes red and swollen, etched with a grief that seemed to reach back decades. She couldn't have been a day under 70. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to disturb anyone. You're not disturbing me, Sophia assured her, glancing around the deserted street. But are you waiting for someone? The man opened his eyes, his voice raspy and strained. Our son, Ryan. He brought us here 6 hours ago. 6 hours? Sophia echoed, her brow furrowing in disbelief. He said he'd be back in an hour, the man continued, his voice trembling. The woman continued to dab at her eyes with a shaking hand. He had an appointment, he said, important business. We waited, and waited, and... Do you have a phone? Can you call him? Sophia asked, already anticipating the answer. The man fumbled a cracked flip phone from his pocket. The screen was a spiderweb of fractures, completely dark. Dropped it last week. Haven't had a chance to replace it. What about his number? I can call from mine. The woman's face crumpled again, fresh tears welling in her eyes. I don't remember it. She turned to her husband, pleading. Arthur, do you remember Ryan's number? Arthur shook his head slowly, his gaze lost in the distance. It's programmed in the phone. I never had to memorize it. A cold knot formed in Sophia's stomach. She scanned the desolate street, the darkened storefronts across the way, the oppressive darkness closing in from all sides. This wasn't just the edge of town. This was the edge of nowhere. Where do you live? I can get you a ride home, she offered, the words tumbling out before she could fully consider the implications. Acacia Gardens, Arthur replied, his voice barely a whisper. On Flower Street. Ryan bought us a beautiful house there. Small, but perfect for us. The woman, who introduced herself as Evelyn, added, managing a weak smile. He moved us in 3 weeks ago. He's been so good to us. Selling our old house, handling all the paperwork. We didn't have to worry about a thing. Something about that seemingly innocent sentence felt unsettling. A discordant note in the melody of their story. But Sophia pushed the feeling aside. Okay, let me order you a car. Oh no, sweetheart. We couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Sophia pulled out her phone, trying to ignore the flashing low battery warning. The Uber estimate made her wince. $38 to Acacia Gardens. She pressed confirm, swallowing her apprehension. Evelyn noticed Ethan, still sleeping soundly against Sophia's shoulder. Her expression softened completely. Oh my, how old is he? 3 months. He's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Evelyn's smile faltered. Your husband must be so proud. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Sophia felt her throat tighten. I'm a widow. The words still felt foreign and impossibly painful in her mouth. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay. It wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. But what else could she say? Arthur stood slowly, his joints protesting with a symphony of creaks. Young lady, we're very grateful. More than you know. The Uber arrived 12 agonizing minutes later. Sophia climbed in with them, telling herself she just wanted to make sure they got home safely. That's all. Just see them to the door. The driver, a man in his 50s with kind eyes etched with the wisdom of experience, nodded as Arthur gave him the address. Acacia Gardens, nice area, new development. They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional sniffle from Evelyn. Sophia watched the couple through the rearview mirror. Arthur held Evelyn's hand, his thumb moving in small, comforting circles over her knuckles. It was such a simple gesture, but it made Sophia's chest ache with a longing so profound it stole her breath. Michael used to do that. Turn here, Arthur directed as they entered a neighborhood of identical, cookie-cutter houses with manicured lawns. Flower Street should be the third right. The driver turned, then turned again. Sophia felt it before she saw it. The subtle tension in the driver's shoulders, the almost imperceptible way he slowed down. Sir, what number on Flower Street? It's a small yellow house with white shutters. They drove the length of Flower Street once, then again, squinting in the dim light. There was no number 42. There was no yellow house with white shutters. There was only an empty lot, overgrown with weeds, with a faded for sale sign hammered into the barren earth. Arthur. Evelyn's voice was barely audible, a fragile whisper of disbelief. Arthur, where's our house? I don't understand. Arthur leaned forward, peering intently at the houses they passed. This is Flower Street. Ryan showed it to me. He sent pictures. I saw it. The driver caught Sophia's eye in the mirror, his expression a mixture of pity and grim understanding. His expression said everything. Sophia's hands had gone clammy, icy cold. Arthur, do you have any paperwork? Anything with an address? Ryan has all of that, Arthur insisted, his voice laced with desperation. He said we didn't need to worry about the details. Can you describe what Ryan looks like, your son? Evelyn turned to her, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Sophia saw the moment realization began to dawn, cracking through the carefully constructed wall of denial. Why are you asking us that? Evelyn's voice trembled. Please, just describe him. Sophia pleaded, her voice firm but gentle. He's 42, brown hair, wears glasses. He's a financial advisor. He's been helping us for months, getting our affairs in order after we retired. He sold our old house. Arthur's voice broke, the unspoken fear finally surfacing. Oh God. Oh God. Arthur, what's wrong? Evelyn grabbed his arm, her grip tightening. What's happening? Our house, our real house, downtown Richmond. 40 years we lived there. He said it was too big, too old, that we needed the money. He said he'd invest it for us, get us better returns. Arthur couldn't finish. His whole body started to shake uncontrollably. The driver pulled over to the curb, his face etched with concern. The meter read $42 and was still climbing. Sophia made a split-second decision, a desperate gamble born of empathy and a fierce refusal to stand by and watch. Come home with me. Three heads swiveled to stare at her, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. What? Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the car. Come home with me tonight, Sophia repeated, her voice gaining strength. It's late, you're exhausted, and we need to figure this out. I have a spare bedroom. You can stay there. We can't possibly, Arthur began, shaking his head. Yes, you can. Sophia shifted Ethan, who was starting to fuss, his tiny body stiffening with discomfort. I'm not leaving you at a hotel. I'm not leaving you alone. You come home with me, we get some sleep, and tomorrow we figure out what Ryan did. The words came out with more conviction than she felt. Her apartment was tiny, barely large enough for her and Ethan. Her life was a precarious balancing act, held together with duct tape and sheer determination. Her mother-in-law was already furious that she'd missed Sunday dinner, but looking at Arthur and Evelyn, at the way they clung to each other like shipwreck survivors adrift in a turbulent sea, Sophia knew she couldn't walk away. Okay, Arthur said finally, his voice hollow and defeated. Okay. The driver met Sophia's eyes in the mirror again, this time with a flicker of respect replacing the pity. He reset the meter with a sigh. New address. Sophia gave him her address, her stomach clenching with anxiety. As they drove through the dark streets toward her apartment, she felt Evelyn's frail hand suddenly cover hers. Thank you, the older woman whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you. Sophia looked down at Ethan, his face scrunched up in discomfort, then back at the couple who'd been so cruelly abandoned on a cold stone bench by someone they trusted implicitly. Because someone should, she said quietly, the words echoing in the confined space of the car. Someone should. The car pulled up outside her building 20 minutes later. Sophia paid the driver, watching her bank balance plummet to a number that made her stomach churn. She led Arthur and Evelyn up 3 flights of stairs to her small, 2-bedroom apartment, each step a painful reminder of her own precarious financial situation. As she unlocked the door and flipped on the lights, she saw her home through their eyes. Modest, clean, a playpen crammed into the corner, dishes drying haphazardly by the sink, Michael's worn jacket still hanging on the hook by the door, a ghost of her former life, a reminder she couldn't quite bring herself to erase. It's not much, she started apologetically. It's perfect, Evelyn said, her voice filled with genuine sincerity, and she meant it. Morning light arrived far too early, seeping through the gaps in the blinds and stirring Sophia from a restless sleep. She woke to the sound of someone moving about in her cramped kitchen. For one disorienting second, she thought it was Michael, back from the grave, filling the space with his familiar presence. Then reality crashed back, a wave of grief washing over her as she remembered the cruel finality of his absence. She found Evelyn at the stove, carefully scrambling eggs, the air already fragrant with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Arthur sat hunched at the small, rickety table, looking even smaller and more vulnerable in the harsh morning light, staring blankly at his hands as if searching for answers etched in the lines of his palms. You didn't have to do that, Sophia said, her voice thick with sleep. Evelyn turned, managing a tired smile. Old habits. I haven't slept past 6 in 50 years. They ate in awkward silence, the clinking of forks against plates amplifying the tension in the tiny apartment. Ethan fussed in his bassinet, a low, persistent grumble that threatened to escalate into a full-blown meltdown. Evelyn stood immediately, her eyes filled with concern. May I? Sophia nodded, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. She watched as Evelyn lifted Ethan with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, swaying gently from side to side, humming a soft, wordless melody. The baby quieted almost instantly, his tiny body relaxing in her arms. You're good at that, Sophia said, a hint of awe in her voice. I raised 3 children for grandchildren, Evelyn replied, her voice catching slightly. I thought Ryan was taking care of us. She paused, the silence stretching taut. After we retired, money got tight. Our old house, it was beautiful but falling apart. The roof leaked, the foundation had cracks. Ryan said we were sitting on a gold mine, that we should sell and invest the money wisely. Arthur finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. He showed us properties, took us to see houses, acacia gardens, he said. Perfect for retirees. Gated community medical facilities nearby. We signed papers. So many papers. He trailed off, his gaze clouding with confusion. Do you remember how much he sold your house for? Sophia asked carefully, her instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. Arthur's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He said it was fair market value. Said he'd invested it and we'd have $500,000 in 6 months. Guaranteed returns. Sophia felt a chill snake its way down her spine. A cold premonition of impending disaster. Arthur, where was your house? What neighborhood? Downtown Richmond, Chester Avenue. We bought it in 1985 for $48,000. Sophia pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, typing in the search terms with a frantic urgency. Asterisk real estate values Richmond Chester Avenue. Asterisk the search results loaded, and her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. What? Evelyn moved closer, still cradling Ethan, her eyes searching Sophia's face with mounting anxiety. What is it? Houses on Chester Avenue are selling for $550,000. Some going for $600,000. The words hung in the air like the acrid smell of smoke after a gunshot. Arthur stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped loudly against the linoleum floor, the sound echoing in the small apartment. That's not. He said $320 was generous. He said the neighborhood had declined. He showed us comparisons. He lied. Sophia's voice came out flat, devoid of emotion. Arthur, he stole at least $200,000 from you. Evelyn sank heavily into a chair, her face ashen. No, he's our son. He wouldn't. Where are the papers? The deed transfer? The sale documents? Sophia pressed, her voice unwavering. Ryan kept them, Arthur replied, his voice barely a whisper. He said we didn't need to worry about the details, that he'd handle everything. He's a financial advisor. He knows what he's doing. An alarm went off in Sophia's mind, a deafening siren that drowned out all other thoughts. Every instinct she'd developed working in banking for the past 6 years, honing her skills in fraud detection and risk assessment, started screaming at her. This wasn't just a bad deal, a case of poor judgment. This was fraud, pure and simple. Systematic, calculated fraud perpetrated by a wolf in sheep's clothing. The doorbell rang, shattering the fragile silence that had descended upon the apartment. Sophia froze, her heart leaping into her throat. It was 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Nobody visited her on Saturday mornings, and certainly not unannounced. She cautiously opened the door to find Sharon, her mother-in-law, standing in the hallway with a covered dish in her hands and a smile plastered on her face. A smile that died a slow, agonizing death the second she looked past Sophia into the apartment. Who are they? Sharon's voice went sharp, the warmth replaced by a glacial chill. Sharon, hi. I wasn't expecting. Sophia stammered, her mind racing to formulate a plausible explanation. I brought you breakfast casserole, like I do every Saturday. Sharon pushed past her, ignoring her protests, stopping abruptly in the middle of the small living room. Her eyes darted from Arthur to Evelyn, taking in their disheveled appearance and the small overnight bags huddled forlornly by the couch. Sophia, a word. Outside. Now. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Sophia followed her mother-in-law onto the small balcony, closing the sliding door behind them, shutting out the scene inside. Through the glass, she could see Arthur and Evelyn sitting rigid, their eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance, pretending not to listen, but their faces betraying their mounting anxiety. What the hell is this? Sharon hissed, her voice barely above a whisper, but laced with venom. They needed help. Their son abandoned them. Sophia explained, her voice barely audible. And I don't care if their son set them on fire. You don't bring strangers into your home, into my grandson's home. It's my home, Sharon. Is it? Sharon's face flushed crimson with anger. Because last I checked, I'm the one paying half your rent. I'm the one who comes here 4 days a week to watch Ethan while you work. I'm the one who's been holding this family together since Michael died. The words hit like slaps, each one landing with brutal force, because they were true. All of it was true. They had nowhere to go, Sophia said quietly, her voice trembling. That's not your problem. You can barely take care of yourself and your son. You work 10-hour days. You can't afford childcare. You're drowning in credit card debt from the funeral. And now you want to add 2 elderly strangers to that disaster? They're not strangers anymore. It's been one night, Sophia. One night, and you think you know them. You think you can save them. Sharon stepped closer, her eyes narrowed, her voice laced with a chilling warning. I've been patient. I've been understanding. But this is insane. You want to know what happens to people who take in every stray that needs help? They lose everything. What do you want me to do? Throw them out? Sophia pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. Yes, call social services. Let them handle it. That's what they're for. Sharon, no. Listen to me. Sharon's voice dropped low, a dangerous whisper that sent shivers down Sophia's spine. It's them or me. You want to play Mother Teresa? Fine. But I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy yourself and put my grandson at risk. You choose right now. Them or me. The ultimatum hung between them like a finely honed blade, its edge glinting with unspoken threats. You can't ask me to do that, Sophia whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I just did. Them or me, Sophia. I won't come back here if those people are still in your house. I won't watch Ethan. I won't help you anymore, and you'll have no one. Sharon turned on her heel and walked back through the apartment without another word, her back ramrod straight, her shoulders rigid with disapproval. The door slammed behind her, the sound reverberating through the small apartment like a thunderclap, silencing all other sounds. Sophia stood on the balcony, her hands gripping the railing so hard that her knuckles turned white, the metal biting into her skin. Through the glass, she saw Evelyn and Arthur sitting exactly as before, but their faces had changed, the carefully constructed facades of composure crumbling to reveal the raw fear and vulnerability beneath. They'd heard everything, every harsh word, every stinging accusation. She opened the door and stepped back inside, bracing herself for the inevitable fallout. We'll go, Arthur said immediately, standing shakily to his feet. We'll leave right now. We're so sorry. We never meant to cause you trouble. Evelyn was already gathering their meager belongings, moving with quick, panicked efficiency, her movements betraying her deep-seated anxiety. You've been so kind, but your mother-in-law is right. You can't risk your family for us. Stop. Sophia's voice came out harder than she intended, cutting through the frantic energy in the room. Both of them froze, their eyes wide with fear. Just stop. Sit down. They sat, their bodies tense, their eyes fixed on Sophia, waiting for the inevitable dismissal. Sophia pulled out her laptop, setting it on the table with a resolute thud. Before you go anywhere, I need information. Your full names, your old address, Ryan's full name when he sold the house. Everything you can remember. Why? Arthur asked, his voice filled with suspicion. Because I'm going to fix this, Sophia replied, her voice unwavering. You can't, Evelyn whispered, her eyes filled with despair. He's our son. He has all the legal documents. We signed everything he put in front of us because we trusted him. Then we find a lawyer. We file a police report. With what money? Arthur's voice cracked, his shoulders slumping in defeat. We have nothing. Ryan took everything. We can't afford a lawyer. We can barely afford food. Sophia opened her laptop and started typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard. My family's lawyer, David. He handled Michael's estate. Let me call him. It's Saturday, Evelyn said, her voice filled with doubt. David owes me a favor. Sophia pulled out her phone and dialed, the numbers blurring before her eyes. He answered on the third ring, his voice warm and familiar. Sophia. Everything okay? David, I need your help. I need it now and I need it pro bono. There was a brief pause, a moment of hesitation before he responded. Tell me. She told him everything, laying bare the details of the bus stop encounter, the missing house, the glaring discrepancies in the numbers. Arthur and Evelyn sat frozen, listening to their nightmare being laid out in clinical detail, each word a fresh wound. When Sophia finished, David was quiet for a long moment, the silence stretching taut between them. Those are all the signs of a scam. Elder financial abuse, fraud, possibly identity theft. Sophia, this is serious. This is criminal. Can you help them? Sophia pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. Yes, but it's going to take time. Months, maybe years. The legal system moves slowly, and if Ryan has the paperwork, just tell me you'll try. Sophia interrupted, her voice unwavering. Another pause. I'll try. Send me everything you have. I'll start making calls Monday morning. Thank you, David. Sophia, why are you doing this? He asked, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. She looked at Arthur and Evelyn, at their faces carved with betrayal and fear, their eyes pleading for a glimmer of hope. When my husband passed away, I felt abandoned by the whole world, like I was falling and no one would catch me. They were abandoned by their own son. I know how much it hurts to feel like you have no one. She hung up, the silence in the apartment heavy with unspoken emotion. Evelyn was crying again, but differently this time, the tears a mixture of relief and disbelief. Why? Why would you do this for us? Because someone should, Sophia said simply, her voice filled with a quiet conviction. The weekend crawled by in a strange fog, a surreal blend of anxiety and determination. Sophia called out sick from work on Monday, something she never did, and spent the day glued to her laptop, poring over documents and researching legal resources, while Arthur and Evelyn sat nearby, speaking in low, broken sentences, their grief palpable. David called at 3 p.m., his voice grim and businesslike. I found the property records, he said without preamble. Your house on Chester Avenue sold 3 months ago for $280,000. Arthur's face went ashen, his hand flying to his chest as if he'd been struck a physical blow. Ryan told us $320, Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. He pocketed $40,000 before you even saw a dime. But that's not the worst part. The buyer was a shell corporation. I tracked it back. Ryan owns it. He sold your house to himself at below market value, then likely flipped it immediately for full price. You were never going to see that $500,000, Arthur. You were never going to see any of it. Evelyn made a strangled sound, a gasp of pain as if she'd been punched in the stomach. There's more, David continued, his voice devoid of emotion. I did some digging. This isn't Ryan's first time. He's done this to at least 3 other elderly couples in the past 4 years. Different names, different schemes, but the same pattern. He gains their trust, convinces them to sell property, then vanishes with the money. He moves on with his life without any guilt or concern. So he's a con artist, Sophia said, her voice flat. Our son is a professional con artist. Not just that, he hasn't paid property taxes on your old house in 3 years. The new owners are going to get hit with liens. He's left a trail of financial destruction wherever he goes. Arthur stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to them, his body rigid with suppressed emotion. His shoulders shook imperceptibly. What do we do? I'm filing a police report today, Sophia said, her voice regaining its resolve. I'll submit everything to the DA's office. But Sophia, you need to understand, even if they catch him, even if they prosecute, the money is probably gone. Hidden in offshore accounts, spent, laundered. Recovery is unlikely. So they lost everything, every last cent. David confirmed her worst fears. 40 years of equity gone. I'm so sorry. After the call ended, nobody spoke for a long time. Arthur stayed at the window, his silhouette a dark, unmoving form against the pale light. Evelyn sat with her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance, her face an expressionless mask of despair. Finally, Arthur turned around. His face etched with a grief so profound it seemed to have aged him decades in a matter of hours. His eyes were red and bloodshot, the light gone out of them. 40 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. 40 years I worked at the shipyard. Double shifts, holidays, weekends. We saved every penny. We bought that house with money we earned with our own hands. We raised our children there. We were going to leave it to them. He couldn't finish, the words choking in his throat. And now we have nothing, Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. We're homeless. We're 75 years old, and we're homeless. Sophia felt something crack open in her chest, a dam bursting and releasing a torrent of pent-up grief and empathy. She thought about Michael, about the life insurance policy Sharon had helped her navigate, about the small savings account that was all she had left of their carefully laid plans. She thought about being abandoned, about the crushing weight of loneliness and despair. She made another decision, a leap of faith driven by compassion and a fierce determination to make a difference. You're not homeless, she declared, her voice resonating with newfound strength. You live here. Arthur shook his head vehemently. We can't ask that of you. Your mother-in-law was right. We're strangers. You're not strangers anymore, and I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you live here until we figure this out. But the money? Arthur protested, his voice laced with guilt. I don't want your money, Sophia interrupted, her voice firm. I want... She stopped, searching for the right words to express the complex emotions swirling within her. When Michael died, people said nice things. They brought casseroles and flowers. Then they disappeared. Everyone disappeared. I was drowning and no one stayed. So I'm staying for you because that's what people should do. Evelyn stood and walked over to Sophia, her eyes filled with gratitude. She took both of Sophia's hands in hers, her touch surprisingly strong. You're a young woman with a baby and a full-time job. You can't take on two broken old people. Watch me, Sophia replied, meeting her gaze unflinchingly. Give me one real reason why you do this. Evelyn persisted, her voice laced with skepticism. Sophia met her eyes, her gaze unwavering. Because when I look at you, I see myself 6 months ago. Alone, terrified, betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect me. And I remember wishing, praying that someone would just stay. So I'm staying. Arthur's voice was rough with emotion. We have no money. We can't pay rent. We can't. I don't care about rent, Sophia interrupted, her voice filled with a quiet determination. Then what do you want from us? The question hung in the air, unanswered, a heavy weight pressing down on them all. Sophia looked at Ethan sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, so tiny and vulnerable, so completely dependent on her. She thought about tomorrow, about going back to work, about Sharon's ultimatum and the impossible choice she'd been forced to make. Actually, she said slowly, a glimmer of an idea beginning to form in her mind. There is something. That night, after Arthur and Evelyn had gratefully retired to bed in her spare room, exhaustion finally claiming them, Sophia's phone rang, the sudden shrillness of the sound startling her. It was Sharon. She almost didn't answer, the memory of their bitter exchange still raw. Hello, she said tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper. Are they still there? Sharon's voice was ice, each word laced with disdain. Yes, then we're done. I won't be coming by anymore. You're on your own, Sophia, completely on your own. The line went dead, leaving Sophia in stunned silence, the dial tone a mocking reminder of her isolation. Sophia sat in the dark of her bedroom, holding her phone, feeling the crushing weight of what she had just lost. Sharon had been her lifeline, her anchor in the storm. For days a week, Sharon watched Ethan while Sophia worked, providing her with not just childcare but also emotional support and a sense of stability. Without that, she really hadn't thought about the practical logistics of the situation, so focused on her desire to help Arthur and Evelyn that she had failed to fully consider the consequences. Her maternity leave had ended 2 months ago, and she was barely treading water, juggling work, motherhood, and grief. She worked from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the bank, sometimes later if a client needed help. Daycare cost $1,400 a month, money she absolutely didn't have. She couldn't bring Ethan to the office, and she couldn't realistically work effectively from home with a 3-month-old demanding her constant attention. Without Sharon, she had no one to watch her son, no way to bridge the gap between her work and her responsibilities as a single parent. And without work, she couldn't pay rent, couldn't afford food, couldn't provide for Ethan. The math was brutally simple and devastating. She must have made a sound, a small whimper of despair, because suddenly Ethan was crying, a piercing wail that tore through the silence. Not his hungry cry or his tired cry, but his pain cry, the one that meant his stomach hurt again, the colic that had been getting progressively worse over the past few weeks. Sophia stumbled to his bassinet, her movements clumsy with exhaustion and fear, lifting him gently, trying to soothe him, but her efforts were futile. He screamed harder, his tiny body arching in discomfort. She tried feeding him, burping him, changing him, but nothing worked. Nothing seemed to ease his suffering. A soft knock on her bedroom door, a gentle intrusion that offered a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Sophia, can I help? Evelyn stood in the doorway, a borrowed nightgown hanging loosely on her frail frame, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, framing her face with a soft glow. I don't know what's wrong with him, Sophia said, her voice thick with tears. He does this every night now. She wiped furiously at her tears so Evelyn wouldn't see her cry. The doctor said it's colic, but nothing helps. May I try? Sophia hadn't felt so desperate and relieved to see someone in her life. Sophia handed over her son, feeling like a complete failure, her arms suddenly empty and aching. Evelyn settled into the rocking chair, a haven of calm in the chaos, laying Ethan across her knees face down, his tiny body nestled against her. Her hands moved in slow, practiced circles on his tiny back, her touch gentle and reassuring. She hummed something low and melodic, a lullaby passed down through generations. Then she pulled a small cloth from her pocket, dampened it with water from the nightstand, and dabbed a few drops on the baby's lips. Chamomile, she said softly, her voice barely audible. Just a taste. My grandmother's trick. Within moments, Ethan's cries began to subside, his tiny body relaxing as the tension drained away, leaving a small, hiccuping sigh in its wake. Evelyn gently rocked him as the baby drifted into a peaceful sleep. 2 minutes passed, and Ethan's cries subsided. Within 5 he was sound asleep. Sophia watched, bewildered. How do you two remember all this? You've raised 3 kids, but I didn't know you knew so much. Evelyn looked up, her face softened by the room's dimness. Years of colic, honey. You learn things. Your mother-in-law, well, she's different. She feeds him, changes him, sure. But when he cries like that, she just plops him down in the bassinet and lets him cry it out. Says it's good for his lungs. That's old thinking. Cruel thinking. Evelyn carefully lifted Ethan and placed him back in his bassinet. He remained asleep, a small, peaceful form. You're exhausted, Evelyn observed gently. I'm always exhausted. You need help, Sophia. I had help once. Now I don't. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on her at once. Sharon isn't coming back, and I have to work. I can't afford daycare. I don't know what I'm going to do. The words tumbled out, raw and desperate. Evelyn sat beside her, her presence a quiet comfort. What time do you leave for work? And what time do you get home? 6:30 usually, sometimes 7 o'clock. And Ethan, he eats every 3 hours, like clockwork. Evelyn paused, her brow furrowed in thought. Then, I could watch him. Sophia turned, staring at Evelyn in disbelief. What? During the day while you're at work, I could watch Ethan. I'm good with babies, Sophia. Better than I am at anything else anymore. Her voice was laced with a quiet desperation. Evelyn, no. You're dealing with your own crisis. You can't. I can't what? Sit around all day feeling sorry for myself. Dwelling on what my son did to us? Evelyn's voice turned fierce, a spark of defiance flickering in her eyes. I need a purpose, Sophia. I need to feel useful. I need to feel like I'm not just a burden taking up space in your home. You're not a burden, Sophia insisted, reaching out to take Evelyn's hand. Then, Evelyn cleared her throat, her gaze intense. Let me help. Let me watch Ethan while you work. Let me give back some of what you've given us. Arthur can take care of himself during the day. He'll probably be more comfortable without me hovering anyway. Evelyn tightened her grip on Sophia's hand. Please let me do this. Sophia looked at her son, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. She thought about tomorrow, about the impossible choice she'd been facing. She thought about daycare centers where babies screamed in rows of cribs, about strangers who'd never sing lullabies or know the chamomile trick. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The conviction in Evelyn's voice was unwavering. The next morning, over a simple breakfast of toast and coffee, Sophia presented the idea to Arthur. He listened carefully, his gaze thoughtful, then nodded slowly. It makes sense, he said, his voice firm. Evelyn's a wonderful caregiver. She practically raised our grandchildren single-handed. He paused, his expression sobering. But Sophia, we should be clear about terms. This needs to be an arrangement fair to everyone. Terms? Sophia echoed, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Arthur's voice grew stronger, more resolute. You're providing housing. Evelyn will provide childcare during your work hours. I may not be able to watch babies anymore, but I can cook, clean, do basic repairs. I worked maintenance for 30 years. I can fix that leak under your sink I noticed yesterday. Replace those loose floorboards. Patch the crack in your bathroom tile. You don't have to, Sophia protested, touched by their offer. Yes, we do, Arthur insisted, meeting her gaze directly. We're not charity cases, Sophia. We're not helpless elderly people you rescued. We're capable adults who can contribute. If we're going to live here, it needs to be an exchange. Equal partners. Something shifted in the room, a subtle but powerful change in the dynamic. Sophia felt it. Not pity, not charity, but something else entirely. Something that feels almost like a family arrangement, Evelyn said softly, a hint of hope in her voice. Yes, Arthur agreed, his gaze softening. A family arrangement. We take care of Ethan during the day. You take care of us at night and on weekends. We pool our resources, share responsibilities, we help each other until we figure out what comes next. Sophia looked from one to the other, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. Arthur sat straighter now, his shoulders back, a spark of his former strength returning. Evelyn's eyes had a light in them again, a flicker of hope that had been extinguished for too long. They didn't look like victims anymore. Okay, Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion. Okay, it's a deal. They shook hands across the table, the gesture as formal as a business contract, as heartfelt as a vow. Maybe it was both. Maybe that's exactly what it needed to be. That first week was chaos, a whirlwind of adjustments and anxieties. Sophia went to work on Tuesday morning, leaving Ethan with Evelyn, her heart pounding with worry the whole day. She called during her lunch break, her voice trembling slightly. Evelyn reported that Ethan had eaten well, napped twice, and was currently cooing at dust motes in the sunshine streaming through the living room window. Sophia came home to find dinner on the table, a comforting aroma filling the air. Arthur had cooked pot roast with vegetables, a dish Sophia hadn't made since Michael died, the memory too painful to conjure. The apartment smelled like a home instead of a tomb. The floorboards in the hallway didn't creak anymore. A small but significant victory. By Friday, a strange, comforting rhythm had developed. Sophia would wake to find coffee already made, the aroma a gentle invitation to start the day. Evelyn would be ready to take Ethan the second Sophia finished nursing him, her arms outstretched with anticipation. Arthur had a list of repairs he was working through, methodically humming old sea shanties while he worked, filling the apartment with a quiet, productive energy. At night, they'd eat dinner together, real dinners at the table, talking about their days. Arthur told stories about the shipyard where he'd spent his career, his voice filled with the salty tang of the sea. Evelyn shared memories of her children when they were small, carefully avoiding any mention of Ryan, a palpable ache in her voice. Sophia talked about her work at the bank, about difficult customers and office politics, finding a surprising sense of camaraderie in their shared experiences. It felt almost normal, almost like a family. 2 weeks in, Sophia came home to find Evelyn teaching Ethan to track objects with his eyes, using a bright red rattle that had belonged to one of her grandchildren. Arthur had built a small shelf unit for the living room out of scrap what he'd found by the dumpster, transforming discarded materials into something beautiful and useful. This is working, Sophia said, surprised at her own surprise, a hesitant smile gracing her lips. Of course, it is, Evelyn replied, not looking up from Ethan, her voice laced with quiet pride. We're good at this, Sophia. We may have lost everything else, but we're still good at taking care of people. That night, after Arthur and Evelyn had gone to bed, Sophia sat in the dark, holding a sleeping Ethan close to her chest. She thought about Sharon's ultimatum, about the impossible choice she'd been forced to make. She didn't regret it, not even a little bit. For the first time since Michael died, the apartment didn't feel empty, the silence filled with a quiet hum of love and belonging. The call from David came on a Wednesday morning while Sophia was at work, the sound of his voice immediately setting off alarm bells in her mind. They found Ryan, he said, his tone grave. Sophia, he was arrested in Maryland 2 days ago, trying to run the same scam on another elderly couple. He paused, letting the information sink in. The police found documents linking him to Arthur and Evelyn's case. They're extraditing him back to Virginia. That's good news, right? Sophia asked, clinging to a thread of hope. It's a start. But Sophia, there's a problem. David's voice dropped, his tone laced with concern. Adult Protective Services received an anonymous tip yesterday that Arthur and Evelyn are living with you. Someone reported that they're in an unsafe living situation. Sophia's blood went cold, a wave of nausea washing over her. What? That's ridiculous. They're fine. They're better than fine. I know, but the state takes these things seriously. Elder abuse, exploitation, unsafe housing conditions. They have to follow up on every report. Who would report them? Sophia demanded, her voice rising in panic. David was quiet for a moment, a hesitation that spoke volumes. The call came from a Richmond area code. That's all I know. After hanging up, Sophia sat in the empty conference room, staring at nothing, her mind racing. Someone had called Adult Protective Services. Someone who knew Arthur and Evelyn were staying with her. Sharon? It had to be Sharon. The thought sent a shiver of anger and betrayal down her spine. The social worker showed up Thursday evening, her arrival casting a pall over the already tense atmosphere. Catherine Miller was a thin woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a clipboard, her demeanor suggesting a blend of professional detachment and thinly veiled suspicion. She offered a polite smile, but it didn't reach her eyes, a calculated gesture that did little to ease Sophia's growing anxiety. Miss Williams, I'm Catherine Miller from Adult Protective Services. May I come in? Sophia reluctantly led her inside, where Arthur and Evelyn sat on the couch. Ethan nestled securely on Evelyn's lap, his cherubic face a picture of innocent contentment. They looked like a tableau of domestic tranquility, a carefully composed scene of familial harmony. Catherine's smile tightened imperceptibly, a flicker of skepticism crossing her face. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm here to check on your welfare. I understand you've been staying here for approximately 2 weeks. 3 weeks? Arthur corrected firmly, his voice laced with a hint of defiance. And we're fine, better than fine. I see, Catherine said, making a note on her clipboard, her pen scratching against the paper with a purposeful sound. Miss Williams, can you tell me about your experience caring for elderly individuals? They don't need caring for, Sophia retorted, her voice sharp. They take care of themselves. But you work full-time, Catherine pressed, her gaze unwavering. Correct, 10 hours a day. Who supervises them when you're not home? Supervises? Evelyn's voice went sharp, a protective instinct kicking in. We're not children. Of course not, Catherine conceded, her tone condescending. But at your age, accidents can happen. Falls, medication issues, confusion. Catherine turned back to Sophia, her questions relentless. Miss Williams, are you trained in elder care? Do you have medical knowledge? No, Sophia admitted, her frustration mounting. But do you have adequate insurance to cover medical emergencies? Have you made arrangements for their long-term care? The questions kept coming, each one designed to prove Sophia was inadequate, unprepared, unsuitable. Catherine's interrogation was a carefully orchestrated assault, designed to undermine Sophia's confidence and expose the perceived flaws in their living arrangement. Miss Williams, I'm going to be frank, Catherine said, her smile completely gone now, replaced by a stern, judgmental expression. While your intentions may be good, you're a young single mother with a full-time job. These individuals require specialized care and attention. There are facilities specifically designed for their needs. We don't want a facility, Arthur interjected, his voice trembling with anger. We want to stay here. Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, you're not in a position to make that assessment. Catherine retorted, her tone dismissive. You've been through a traumatic experience with your son. Your judgment may be compromised. My judgment is fine, Arthur insisted, his voice rising in protest. Nevertheless, the state has a responsibility to ensure your safety and well-being. Catherine continued, her gaze fixed on Sophia. I'll be recommending a more appropriate placement. Sophia felt rage building in her chest, a burning fury at Catherine's condescension and the threat she represented. They're not going anywhere, she declared, her voice trembling with defiance. That's not your decision to make. Catherine stood, her smile completely gone now, her eyes hard and unforgiving. I'll be filing my report next week. Someone will be in touch about placement options. After she left, the three of them sat in silence, the weight of Catherine's visit hanging heavy in the air. She's going to take us away, Evelyn whispered, her voice filled with despair. She's going to put us in some horrible facility. No, Sophia said, her voice shaking but resolute. No, she's not. She called David immediately, her voice frantic with urgency. There's one option, he said after she explained everything, his tone serious. Legal guardianship. If you become their legal guardian, the state can't remove them without proving you're unfit. You'd have full legal and financial responsibility for their welfare, but you'd also have the authority to make decisions about their care. How do I do that? Sophia asked, her mind racing. It requires a court petition, a hearing, possibly a home study. It's not simple. And Sophia, you need to understand what you're taking on. If their medical bills pile up, you're responsible. If something happens to them, you're responsible. This isn't just having roommates. This is becoming their legal caregiver. Sophia looked at Arthur and Evelyn, at the fear in their faces, at the desperation in their eyes. I want to do it, she said, her voice firm. I want to be their guardian. David was quiet for a moment, his silence filled with a mixture of admiration and concern. Okay, I'll start the paperwork. This is going to get complicated. When is it not? Sophia replied, a wry smile playing on her lips. The guardianship petition took 2 weeks to process, each day filled with uncertainty and mounting anxiety. During that time, Catherine Miller called twice more, each time with thinly veiled threats about noncompliance and state intervention, her relentless pressure adding to Sophia's growing stress. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, a date that loomed large in Sophia's mind, a potential turning point that could determine the future of their unconventional family. David met them at the courthouse, his presence a reassuring anchor in the storm of legal complexities. The judge is fair but thorough, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. She'll ask about finances, housing, your ability to provide care. Be honest, be clear, and show her that this is what Arthur and Evelyn want. They entered the courtroom, the solemn atmosphere adding to the gravity of the situation. The judge, a black woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Harrison, looked over her glasses at them, her gaze sharp and discerning. Miss Williams, you're petitioning for guardianship of Arthur and Evelyn Thompson. Can you explain why? Sophia stood, her heart pounding in her chest, her voice trembling slightly but filled with conviction. Because they're my family, your honor, not by blood but by choice. Because they need someone who will fight for them, protect them, give them dignity. Because I can provide that. Can you afford to provide that? Judge Harrison pressed, her gaze unwavering. Guardianship includes financial responsibility. I work full-time at First Richmond Bank. I have health insurance that can be extended to cover them. I have a stable home and they contribute. Evelyn provides childcare for my son. Arthur handles home maintenance. We're partners. Judge Harrison turned to Arthur and Evelyn, her expression softening slightly. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, is this what you want? Yes, Arthur said firmly, his voice clear and resolute. Absolutely, Evelyn added, her gaze filled with gratitude. Yes, you understand that Miss Williams would have legal authority over medical decisions, finances, living arrangements? Judge Harrison asked, her voice measured. We trust her completely, Arthur replied without hesitation. Evelyn added, her voice thick with emotion. She saved our lives. Literally saved our lives. The judge made notes, her pen scratching against the paper with a rhythmic sound. I'm going to approve this guardianship on a provisional basis for 6 months. Miss Williams, you'll submit quarterly reports about their welfare. If I see any indication that this arrangement isn't working, I'll revisit the decision. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Sophia replied, her voice filled with relief. Then guardianship is granted, Judge Harrison declared, her gavel falling with a resounding thud. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn grabbed Sophia and held on tight, her embrace filled with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Thank you. Arthur shook David's hand, then Sophia's, his grip firm and heartfelt. You didn't have to do this, he said, his voice filled with emotion. Yes, Sophia said, her voice resolute. I did. That night, she lay awake, thinking about what she had just committed to legal responsibility for 2 people she'd known for less than a month. If something went wrong, it would be on her. But nothing felt wrong. For the first time in months, everything felt exactly right. A sense of peace and purpose settling over her like a warm blanket. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the guardianship hearing, disrupting the newfound sense of stability in Sophia's life. She was at work when her phone rang with an unknown number. Hello, is this Sophia Williams? A woman's voice asked, sharp and educated, her tone demanding. Yes, who's this? Sophia replied, her heart pounding in her chest. Patricia Thompson, Evelyn and Arthur's daughter. I'd like to know why you have my parents. Sophia stepped outside the bank, seeking a moment of privacy, her mind racing. Your parents are staying with me because they had nowhere else to go. That's impossible, Patricia retorted, her voice incredulous. They have a house. Ryan bought them a house. Ryan sold their house and stole the money. Your parents were abandoned at a bus stop. I found them. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, a stunned silence that spoke volumes. I don't believe you, Patricia finally said, her voice trembling with anger. Ryan wouldn't. Ryan is in jail, Patricia. Sophia cut in, her voice firm. He's being charged with elder fraud. You can call the Richmond Police Department and confirm that yourself. Another silence, longer this time, filled with unspoken accusations and disbelief. I want to see them, Patricia finally said, her voice strained. Give me your address. You can't keep them from me. I need to ask them first if they want to see you, Sophia replied, her voice calm but resolute. They're my parents, Patricia protested, her voice rising in anger. I'm not keeping them from anyone, but I'm not giving out my address without their permission, Sophia reiterated, her voice unwavering. Sophia hung up, her hands shaking, the encounter leaving her feeling shaken and vulnerable. She called home immediately, her voice tight with anxiety. Arthur answered, his voice filled with a mixture of apprehension and resignation. Your daughter Patricia just called me. She wants to see you. She heard Arthur relay the message to Evelyn, their muffled conversation creating a tense atmosphere in the background. Then Evelyn came on the line, her voice trembling slightly. What did she say? That she wants to see you, that she didn't know about Ryan. She knew, Evelyn said bitterly, her voice laced with pain. She knew something was wrong. We told her Ryan was acting strange, that money was disappearing. She said we were being paranoid. She said we should trust our son. Do you want to see her? Sophia asked, her voice gentle. A long pause followed, filled with unspoken emotions and years of strained relationships. I don't know, Evelyn finally said, her voice filled with uncertainty. I honestly don't know. It's your choice, Sophia reassured her. Completely your choice. Arthur spoke in the background, his voice firm and resolute. Give her the address, he said. Let her come. We need to face this eventually. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold wind, mirroring the unease that filled the apartment. Sophia had cleaned obsessively, driven by a nervous energy and a desperate desire to present a perfect image, though she wasn't sure why. Arthur and Evelyn sat on the couch, their faces etched with anxiety, their posture rigid and unnatural, like they were waiting for an execution. The knock came at 10 a.m. Sharp, punctually signaling the arrival of the inevitable confrontation. Sophia opened the door to find a woman in her late 40s standing on the threshold, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek style, her expensive coat and designer bag projecting an image of wealth and sophistication. Behind her stood a man in a business suit, equally polished and impeccably groomed, his presence adding to the air of power and authority. Patricia, Sophia said, her voice calm but firm. Where are my parents? Patricia pushed past her, ignoring Sophia's attempt to establish control. Mom, Dad? She exclaimed, her voice strained with emotion. Evelyn stood slowly, her movements stiff and hesitant. She didn't move toward her daughter, her expression guarded. Hello, Patricia. What is happening? Patricia demanded, her gaze sweeping around the apartment with barely concealed disgust. Why are you living here with her? Because she saved us, Arthur said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. When Ryan left us with nothing, she took us in. Ryan didn't leave you with nothing, Patricia retorted, her voice incredulous. He bought you a house. He stole our house, Evelyn said, her voice trembling with anger. He sold it for a fraction of its value and kept the money. We have nothing, Patricia. Nothing. That's ridiculous, Patricia scoffed, her voice dismissive. Ryan is a financial advisor. He was helping you invest. He's a con artist. Sophia cut in, her voice sharp and forceful. He's done this to multiple elderly couples. He's currently in jail awaiting trial. Patricia's husband stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Who the hell are you to make accusations about family you don't know? I'm the person who found your in-laws sobbing at a bus stop where their son abandoned them, Sophia retorted, her voice rising in anger. Where were you? We live in New York. We have our own lives, our own children, Patricia replied defensively, her voice laced with resentment. Your parents needed help, and you weren't there? Sophia shot back, her voice filled with contempt. So, you swooped in to play savior. Patricia turned to her parents, her expression hardening. Can't you see what's happening? She's isolated you. She's convinced you that your own family abandoned you, made herself indispensable. This is textbook elder manipulation. Sophia felt her temper snap, a wave of anger washing over her. Manipulation? I work full-time to support them. I used my own money to hire a lawyer. I became their legal guardian so the state wouldn't put them in a facility. What have you done? Legal guardian? Patricia's face went white, her eyes widening in disbelief. You have no right. The court gave me that right, Sophia replied, her voice filled with defiance. Your parents chose this. They're not mentally competent to make that choice. Ryan proved that by taking advantage of them. Arthur stood up, his voice like thunder, his eyes blazing with indignation. Don't you dare suggest we're incompetent. We made a mistake trusting Ryan, but we're perfectly capable of deciding where we want to live and who we want to live with. Dad, please, Patricia pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. No, you listen to me, Arthur retorted, his hands shaking with rage. When Ryan sold our house, we called you. Do you remember? We called you crying, saying something felt wrong, and you told us we were overreacting. You told us to trust Ryan because he's family. Well, family destroyed us, Patricia, and a stranger saved us. So, don't you come into this home and question our judgment. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped, the color draining from her face, her eyes welling up with tears. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was this bad. You didn't want to know? Evelyn said softly, her voice filled with sadness. It was easier to believe everything was fine. So what? You're just going to live here with her forever, as long as she'll have us? Patricia turned to Sophia, her expression hardening, her eyes filled with resentment. You can't take care of them properly. You're too young. You have a baby. You work all day. They need proper care, professional care. They need family, Sophia said, her voice filled with conviction. They need people who actually show up. I'm here now, Patricia protested, her voice rising in anger. 3 weeks too late, Sophia retorted, her voice filled with contempt. Patricia's husband grabbed her arm, his expression grim. Come on, we're not getting anywhere. He looked at Arthur and Evelyn, his expression softening slightly. We're staying at the Marriott downtown, room 412. If you change your minds, if you want real help, call us. They left without saying goodbye, their departure leaving a void in the apartment, a lingering sense of unease that hung heavy in the air. After the door closed, Evelyn sank back onto the couch, her face pale and drawn. She wasn't crying, but she looked hollowed out, her spirit diminished by the painful confrontation. She thinks we're senile, Arthur said, his voice filled with sadness. Our own daughter thinks we've lost our minds. She's scared, Sophia said, her voice filled with empathy. She's dealing with guilt and fear, and it's coming out as anger. She'll be back, Evelyn whispered, her voice filled with foreboding. She won't let this go. She'll try to take us away from you. Sophia sat between them on the couch, taking their hands in hers, offering a silent promise of support. Then we'll fight her together, she said, her voice filled with determination. But she knew Evelyn was right. Patricia wasn't done. Not even close. The letter from Patricia's lawyer arrived 4 days later, confirming Sophia's worst fears. David called her at work the moment he received the court filing, his voice grim. Sophia, Patricia is challenging the guardianship. She's petitioning for it to be transferred to her, claiming you're too young and inexperienced, that you coerced Arthur and Evelyn during a vulnerable time, and that keeping them in Virginia away from their New York family is harmful to their well-being. Can she do that? Sophia asked, her voice filled with disbelief. She can try, David replied, his voice serious. And she has resources, good lawyers, expert witnesses. This isn't going to be easy. That night, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with Arthur and Evelyn. The legal papers spread between them, their stark black ink a symbol of the looming battle. You should let us go, Evelyn said quietly, her voice filled with resignation. What? Sophia exclaimed, her voice filled with shock. To New York with Patricia, Evelyn continued, her gaze fixed on the table. You've done so much already. You shouldn't have to fight a legal battle for us. You don't want to go to New York? Sophia said, her voice filled with disbelief. No, Arthur admitted, his voice filled with sadness. We don't, but we also don't want to destroy your life. Sophia looked at them both, at these two people who'd become grandparents to Ethan, who'd filled the silence in her home with laughter and stories and purpose. She thought about coming home to an empty apartment again, to the hollow silence that had haunted her for so long. She thought about Ethan growing up without them, without their love and their wisdom and their unwavering support. You're not destroying my life, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. You're the best thing that's happened to my life since Michael died. But the legal fees, the time, the stress. Her voice trailed off, overwhelmed by the enormity of the challenge. I don't care, she finally said, her voice firm and resolute. We're fighting this. David warned them the trial would be thorough, a grueling process that would test their resolve and expose their lives to intense scrutiny. Patricia's lawyer, a man named Richard Chun, was known for being aggressive, a formidable opponent who would stop at nothing to win his case. He'd bring in psychologists to evaluate Arthur and Evelyn's mental capacity, social workers to inspect Sophia's home, financial experts to question her ability to provide adequate care. He'll try to paint you as a well-meaning but naive young woman in over her head, David cautioned. He'll suggest you're financially benefiting from this arrangement somehow. He'll make it sound like you're the one taking advantage of them. Let him try, Sophia replied, her voice filled with defiance. The preparation was exhausting, a relentless barrage of paperwork, documentation, and interviews. Sophia had to document everything, every meal, every doctor's appointment, every expense, creating a meticulous record of their daily lives. She photographed the apartment from every angle, showcasing its warmth and its suitability as a home. She got letters from neighbors, from her employer, from Ethan's pediatrician, who'd noticed how much healthier the baby seemed with Evelyn's care, each testimonial adding weight to her defense. 2 days before the trial, Sophia sat with Arthur and Evelyn in the living room, the atmosphere thick with anxiety and anticipation. Ethan was asleep in Evelyn's arms, his small form completely peaceful, a symbol of the love and connection that had blossomed between them. I need to tell you both something, Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. Before we go into that courtroom, They looked at her, their faces etched with worry, their eyes filled with love. When I found you at that bus stop, I thought I was doing the right thing, being a good person, helping strangers. She began, her voice filled with emotion. She had to pause, her throat tight with unshed tears. But somewhere along the way you stopped being strangers. You became. Her voice cracked, overwhelmed by the depth of her feelings. You became my parents, the parents I wish I'd had growing up, the grandparents Ethan deserves. You've taught me how to be a better mother. You've shown me what real family looks like. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, her face softening with emotion. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice choked with love. So, tomorrow when we go into that courtroom, I need you to know something. Sophia continued, her voice firm but filled with emotion. I'm not fighting to keep you here out of obligation or stubbornness. I'm fighting because you're my family, and family doesn't give up on each other. Arthur reached over and took her hand, his grip surprisingly strong, his gaze filled with unwavering support. You're the daughter I wish I'd had, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The one who actually showed up when it mattered. The courthouse on Monday morning was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table with her husband and lawyer, all three of them looking polished and confident, their expensive attire a symbol of their wealth and power. On Sophia's side was David, his presence a reassuring force, and Arthur and Evelyn. Their faces etched with worry but their eyes filled with determination. Their frail figures a testament to their resilience and their unwavering spirit. Sophia clutched a folder full of documents, 3 inches thick, each page a testament to her commitment and her love. Judge Harrison entered, her presence commanding respect, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom with authority. We're here on a petition to transfer guardianship of Arthur and Evelyn Thompson from Sophia Williams to Patricia Thompson, their biological daughter, she announced, her voice clear and resonant. Mr. Chun, you may begin. Patricia's lawyer stood, smoothing his tie with a practiced gesture, his demeanor exuding confidence. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. He began, his voice smooth and persuasive. Miss Williams is a 28-year-old single mother with a full-time job and an infant. She has no training in elder care, no experience managing complex medical needs, and insufficient financial resources to provide the level of care my client's parents require. He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued, his tone laced with condescension. Mrs. Thompson, by contrast, is their daughter, lives in a city with excellent medical facilities, has the financial means to provide top-tier care, and has a stable family home with her husband and children. He called his first witness, a psychologist named Dr. Raymond Foster, a man with an air of intellectual superiority. Dr. Foster, in your evaluation of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, what did you find? Mr. Chun asked, his voice leading. I found 2 elderly individuals who have suffered significant trauma and financial exploitation. Dr. Foster replied, his voice measured and authoritative. Such trauma can impair judgment and make individuals susceptible to undue influence. In your professional opinion, could they have been influenced to accept Miss Williams' guardianship? Mr. Chun pressed, his voice filled with anticipation. It's certainly possible, Dr. Foster replied, his tone carefully considered. In vulnerable states, people often attach to their rescuers. It's a form of trauma bonding. David stood for cross-examination, his demeanor calm but resolute. Dr. Foster, did you find any evidence of cognitive impairment in Arthur or Evelyn Thompson? David asked, his voice sharp and direct. No, Dr. Foster admitted reluctantly. Did you find any evidence that Miss Williams has harmed them in any way? David pressed, his voice unwavering. Not directly, but the situation itself. Dr. Foster began, attempting to evade the question. Yes or no, doctor? David interrupted, his voice firm. Has Miss Williams harmed them? No, Dr. Foster conceded, his tone grudging. Have they expressed any desire to leave her care? David asked, his voice triumphant. No, Dr. Foster admitted, his face flushed with frustration. Thank you, David said, his voice dismissive, bringing the cross-examination to a swift conclusion. No further questions were posed. Next, a social worker took the stand, meticulously detailing the standards for age-appropriate care and the necessities of proper elder care facilities. Following her, a financial analyst cast a shadow of doubt over Sophia's capability to shoulder the escalating medical costs that lay ahead. Each witness, polished and articulate, delivered blows that resonated deeply within the courtroom. Finally, Richard Chun called Patricia to the stand, a spotlight suddenly fixed on her. Mrs. Thompson, could you elaborate on the nature of your relationship with your parents? Richard Chun inquired, his voice laced with professional curiosity. We've always been close, Patricia responded, her voice carrying a weight of nostalgia. I make it a point to call them every week. I visit whenever my schedule permits. They're remarkable people who've dedicated their lives to hard work. Were you aware of the situation involving your brother, Ryan? Not until recently, Patricia admitted, a hint of remorse coloring her tone. I knew they had sold their house, but Ryan assured me he was assisting them with investing the money. I was completely unaware that he was stealing from them, betraying their trust in such a cruel way. And when you discovered that Miss Williams had been granted guardianship of your parents, what was your reaction? Patricia's voice faltered, breaking under the weight of emotion. I was terrified. My parents are in their 70s. They require specialized care, a level of attention that caters to their unique needs. This well-intentioned young woman simply lacks the experience and resources to provide that. I love my parents deeply. I want what's best for them, and I can provide that for them in New York, surrounded by the best facilities and medical professionals. It was a flawless performance, crafted to sway the judge's opinion. Sophia intently watched the judge's face, attempting to decipher her reaction to Patricia's heartfelt testimony. Then it was their turn to present their case. David called Arthur to the stand first, his presence radiating a quiet dignity. Mr. Thompson, do you wish to live with your daughter, Patricia? David asked, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. No, Arthur stated firmly, his gaze unwavering. And why is that? Arthur paused, gathering his thoughts before speaking. Because Patricia loves us the way you love a responsibility, an obligation to be fulfilled. Sophia loves us the way you love family, with genuine warmth and affection. Patricia would place us in a luxurious facility with gourmet meals and stimulating activities. Sophia made us a part of her life, integrating us into her everyday existence. There's a profound difference between being cared for and being loved. Do you feel that Miss Williams has taken advantage of you in any way? Absolutely not, Arthur declared, his voice filled with conviction. She saved our lives, not only providing us with shelter and care, but also giving us purpose again. I fixed things around her apartment, feeling useful and needed. Evelyn helps care for her baby, finding joy in nurturing a new life. We're not just being taken care of, we're contributing, we matter. If the court were to transfer guardianship to your daughter, what would you do? Arthur's voice was resolute. I'm 75 years old. At some point, the court has to respect my ability to know what I want and where I want to be. And I want to be with Sophia. She's become our family. Evelyn's testimony echoed Arthur's sentiments but carried an added layer of emotion. She spoke of holding Ethan, of having a purpose for the first time since retiring, of feeling like a grandmother again instead of a burden on society. My daughter wants to do the right thing, Evelyn explained, her voice trembling slightly. But the right thing to her means placing us somewhere safe and supervised, where we won't be a bother. The right thing to Sophia means making us part of her family, embracing us with all our flaws and vulnerabilities. I don't want safe. I want family. I want to feel like I belong. Finally, David called Sophia to the stand. Miss Williams, why did you take in Arthur and Evelyn Thompson? David inquired, his tone gentle yet probing. Because they needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. Sophia responded, her eyes fixed on Arthur and Evelyn, her voice filled with a sense of protectiveness. Are you benefiting financially from this arrangement? No, they have no money, Sophia clarified. I support them entirely. Then why continue? Why fight so hard to retain guardianship when you could have a much easier life without them? Sophia's gaze shifted from David to Arthur and Evelyn, her heart swelling with affection. Because they're not a burden. They're my family, she declared, her voice resonating with conviction. They help raise my son, offering him a unique perspective and unconditional love. They've taught me invaluable lessons about patience, strength, and what it truly means to show up for people, to be there in times of need. When my husband died, I thought I'd lost my family, but I didn't lose it. I found a new one, an unexpected one that has enriched my life beyond measure. Richard Chun rose for cross-examination, his demeanor shifting to one of professional skepticism. Miss Williams, you're 28 years old with a 9-month-old infant, he stated, his voice sharp and accusatory. What happens when Arthur or Evelyn experiences a medical emergency and you're at work? I call 911, Sophia responded calmly, the same as anyone else would. What if they require long-term care? Nursing facilities cost thousands of dollars per month. Can you afford that? We'll figure it out together, Sophia asserted, her voice unwavering. Together? Or will you be the one making all the decisions because you hold the legal power? I make decisions with them, not for them, Sophia clarified, her gaze steady. But legally, you have the authority to override their wishes. Richard Chin pressed, his tone relentless. Correct. Legally, yes, Sophia conceded, but I never would. I would never betray their trust or disregard their desires. How can the court trust that? Richard Chin challenged, his expression dubious. Sophia met his gaze, her eyes filled with unwavering conviction. Because for 6 months, I've proven it. Every decision, every choice, every plan we make together as a family. That's what family does. They support each other, they respect each other's opinions, and they make decisions collectively. Judge Harrison called for a recess, her expression unreadable. They waited anxiously in the hallway, none of them uttering a word. Sophia's hands trembled uncontrollably, betraying her inner turmoil. 30 minutes later, they were summoned back into the courtroom. Judge Harrison reviewed her notes, her gaze sweeping across everyone present. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented in this case, she announced, her voice measured and deliberate. This is an unusual case, one that presents unique challenges. On paper, Mrs. Thompson appears to be the more suitable guardian. She's the biological daughter. She possesses greater financial resources. She can provide what most would consider more appropriate care. Sophia's heart sank, her hopes momentarily dashed. However, the judge continued, her voice resonating with authority. This court must consider what the individuals in question want. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are not cognitively impaired. They're not being coerced or manipulated. They've made a clear, rational choice about where they want to live and who they want caring for them. And I believe that choice should be respected. Sophia struggled to breathe, her lungs constricting with anticipation. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love, care, respect, and commitment. From what I've seen, Miss Williams has provided all of those things, selflessly and unconditionally. Therefore, guardianship will remain with Sophia Williams. However, I'm ordering quarterly check-ins for the next year to ensure that this arrangement continues to serve everyone's best interests. The gavel came down, its sound echoing through the courtroom. Sophia instinctively grabbed David's arm to steady herself, her legs threatening to buckle beneath her. Arthur and Evelyn embraced each other, tears streaming down their faces, their joy uncontainable. Across the aisle, Patricia sat frozen, her face pale with a mixture of shock and disappointment. Outside the courthouse, Patricia caught up to them, her voice laced with desperation. Mom, Dad, please. Evelyn turned, her gaze meeting her daughter's. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, years of unspoken emotions hanging in the air. I love you, Patricia finally said, her voice cracking with emotion. I know I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. We love you, too, Evelyn said softly, her eyes filled with compassion. But we're staying with Sophia. Patricia nodded slowly, accepting their decision with a heavy heart. She turned her gaze to Sophia, her expression earnest. Take care of them. I will, Sophia promised, her voice filled with sincerity. If you need anything, money, medical help, anything at all, call me, please. Okay, Sophia replied, her heart touched by Patricia's genuine concern. Patricia walked away, her husband's arm around her shoulders, her steps filled with a sense of resignation. Sophia felt a strange mix of victory and sadness, the complexities of family relationships weighing heavily on her mind. That night, back at the apartment, they ordered pizza and ate in tired silence, the events of the day having taken their toll. Ethan crawled from person to person, babbling happily, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded. We need to talk about the future, Arthur said finally, breaking the silence. Medical costs, long-term planning, what happens if our health declines? We'll face it together, Sophia responded, her voice filled with determination. As a family, the way it should be. Evelyn reached across the table and took Sophia's hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you for fighting for us. Thank you for being worth fighting for. 3 months after the trial, Sophia received the call she had been hoping for. The one that would change their lives for the better. We'd like to offer you the position, the HR director from Charlotte First Financial announced, her voice brimming with excitement. Senior Customer Relations Manager. It's a significant step up from your current role. What's the salary? Sophia asked, her heart pounding with anticipation. When she heard the number, Sophia had to sit down, the magnitude of the offer overwhelming her. Nearly double what she made now, better benefits, better hours, a chance to provide a better life for her unconventional family. There's just one thing, Sophia said, her voice filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. I need to bring my family with me. Of course, the relocation package includes. No, I mean it's complicated, she explained, elaborating on the unique circumstances surrounding Arthur and Evelyn. There was a pause on the other end of the line, the HR director momentarily taken aback. That's very unusual. I know, but they're non-negotiable, Sophia asserted, her voice firm and unwavering. Another pause, longer this time, as the HR director weighed the complexities of the situation. Okay, we'll make it work. That evening, Sophia sat Arthur and Evelyn down, her heart filled with excitement and a touch of trepidation. I got a job offer in Charlotte, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. Better pay, better hours, better everything, but I need to know if you'd want to come with me. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them, a connection forged over years of shared experiences. Yes, Arthur said, his voice filled with conviction. Absolutely, yes. The move took 6 weeks to arrange, a flurry of activity as they prepared to embark on this new chapter. Sophia found a small house to rent, 3 bedrooms with a yard, something they never could have afforded in Richmond, a space where they could create new memories and build a future together. The extra money from the new job meant she could finally get family health insurance that covered Arthur and Evelyn. Real coverage with dental and vision, a weight lifted from her shoulders. I've never had insurance this good, Arthur admitted, examining the paperwork with a sense of disbelief. Charlotte was different, quieter than Richmond, but with a warmth that surprised them, a sense of community that enveloped them from the moment they arrived. The neighbors brought over casseroles when they moved in, welcoming them with open arms. The grocery store clerk chatted with Evelyn about recipes, sharing tips and tricks like old friends. It felt like the kind of place where people looked after each other, where kindness and compassion were valued above all else. Arthur found a community garden 2 blocks away, a haven where he could reconnect with nature and find solace in the simple act of tending to the earth. He started spending mornings there, his hands in the soil, talking to other retirees about tomatoes and proper mulching techniques. He came home dirty and happy, his eyes shining with renewed purpose. Evelyn joined a book club at the local library, a place where she could engage her mind and forge new friendships. She came home talking about characters and plot twists, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. I forgot what it was like to have friends, she told Sophia one night, her voice filled with emotion. Real friends, not just people I knew from church. Ethan started saying real words, his vocabulary expanding with each passing day. Mama first, then Baba for bottle, milestones that filled their hearts with joy. But the word that made them all cry was Gamma for grandma. Reaching his arms up to Evelyn, his innocent love transcending the boundaries of blood and biology. He thinks I'm his grandmother, Evelyn whispered, holding him close, her eyes brimming with tears. You are his grandmother, Sophia said, her voice filled with conviction, reinforcing the bond that had formed between them. 6 months into Charlotte, Sophia met Julian at the hospital during one of Arthur's routine checkups, a chance encounter that would forever alter the course of her life. He was a nurse, tall with kind eyes and an easy smile, radiating a sense of warmth and compassion that instantly drew her in. When Arthur's blood pressure spiked due to anxiety about the appointment, Julian sat with him, talking about baseball until Arthur calmed down, his gentle demeanor easing Arthur's fears. You're good at that, Sophia said afterward, her voice filled with admiration. 20 years of practice, Julian smiled, his eyes twinkling. Your dad was really worried. He's not my dad, Sophia explained, a hint of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. It's complicated. Family usually is, Julian replied, his tone understanding. They ran into each other again at the grocery store, then at a coffee shop, chance encounters that felt like fate. Then he asked her to dinner, a simple invitation that sent her heart racing. Sophia said no, at first, overwhelmed by the complexities of her life, the fear of opening herself up to someone new, too complicated, too soon, too much going on. But Julian was patient, respecting her boundaries and understanding her hesitations. He didn't push, he just kept showing up, being kind, making her laugh, his presence a steady and reassuring force in her chaotic world. Their first real date was 3 months later, a tentative step towards something more. Sophia was terrified to leave Ethan, but Evelyn shooed her out the door, her eyes filled with encouragement. Go have fun, she urged. Remember what that feels like. Dinner turned into coffee turned into a walk turned into standing outside her house at midnight, talking about everything and nothing, their connection deepening with each passing moment. I should warn you, Sophia said, her voice filled with apprehension. I come with a lot of baggage. Most interesting people do, Julian replied, his smile reassuring. I mean a lot, Sophia emphasized, wanting to be completely honest. A baby, 2 elderly roommates who are actually my legal dependents, a dead husband, a mother-in-law who hates me, and about 15 different kinds of trauma. Julian smiled, unfazed by her candor. I'm a nurse. I've seen worse. He didn't run, a reaction that shocked and relieved her in equal measure. He met Arthur and Evelyn and treated them like the important people they were, engaging them in conversation and showing genuine interest in their lives. They were not obstacles to navigate around but valued members of her family. He played with Ethan on the floor, making silly voices that made the baby shriek with laughter, his playful nature endearing him to everyone. I like him, Arthur said after Julian left one evening, his voice filled with approval. He's steady. Coming from Arthur, a man of few words and even fewer compliments, that was the highest praise imaginable. The relationship moved slowly, allowing Sophia the time and space she needed to heal and trust. Julian understood that, respecting her pace and honoring her vulnerabilities. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel guilty for having priorities other than him. His unwavering support a constant source of comfort. One night, a year after they'd moved to Charlotte, Julian stayed for dinner, a routine that had become a cherished part of their lives. He'd show up with wine or dessert, help Arthur set the table, chat with Evelyn about her book club, hold Ethan while Sophia finished cooking. His presence seamlessly integrated into their family dynamic. After dinner, after Arthur and Evelyn had retired to their room, after Ethan was asleep, Julian and Sophia sat on the porch in the quiet darkness, the crickets chirping in the background. I love you, he said simply, his voice filled with sincerity. Sophia's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding in her chest. Julian, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. I'm terrified, she admitted, her voice trembling, of losing someone again, of Ethan losing someone again. I know, but you can't live your whole life afraid, Julian said gently, his hand reaching for hers. 2 years after moving to Charlotte, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Julian asked them all to sit down in the living room, gathering them together for a momentous occasion. Even Ethan, now 3 years old and constantly moving, was brought in, sensing the significance of the moment. I have a question, Julian said, his voice filled with emotion. He pulled out a small box, his hands trembling slightly. Sophia's heart stopped, her breath caught in her throat. Before I ask, I need to say something to Arthur and Evelyn, Julian continued, his gaze fixed on them with sincerity. You're part of this family. You're important, and I want you to know that if Sophia says yes, I'm not just marrying her. I'm joining all of you. Arthur's eyes welled up with tears, his heart overflowing with gratitude. Son, that's the best thing anyone's ever said to me. Julian turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with love and hope. Will you marry me? She looked around the room at Arthur and Evelyn, who'd become her surrogate parents, at Ethan, who was trying to eat the couch cushion, at Julian, patient and steady and real, the man who had shown her what it meant to love and be loved again. Yes, she said, her voice filled with emotion, but I have conditions. Julian laughed through tears, his relief palpable. Of course you do. Arthur walks me down the aisle, Evelyn is my matron of honor, and we're doing this in the backyard so everyone we love can be there. Deal, Julian replied without hesitation, accepting her conditions with joy. The wedding was small, intimate, and filled with love, a celebration of the unconventional family they had created. Sophia wore a simple white dress. A widow, adrift in the sea of her grief, stumbled upon two souls abandoned at a desolate bus stop. Against the cold, hard logic of her weary mind, against the practical voices whispering of self-preservation, she felt a stirring, an echo of hope. She decided, against all reason, that these two forgotten souls were worth saving, worth the effort, worth the risk. And in extending her hand, in pulling them from the shadows, she unknowingly rescued herself from the abyss of despair. Join our community as we delve into the heart of human connection and share stories that resonate with meaning. Click the like button to show your appreciation, and subscribe to ensure you never miss a new narrative, and to awaken each day with profound lessons and a renewed sense of heartfelt empathy. Don't forget to tap the notification bell. Let us begin our days together, bathed in the warm glow of shared humanity.